Thank you very much. So thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here, plus very nervous. First thing, I apologize for my accent. It's impossible to get rid of my Spanish accent. So that's it. If some of the words are not clear or I just come up with a random word that doesn't exist in English, yes, please let me know, okay? So yeah, I'm Pelayo. I work in CDC. CDC is not the Center for Disease Control. CDC, despite the fact that we get some emails from time to time saying, yeah, I have the flu, what I can do, etc. Sorry, this is the wrong CDC. So CDC Group is a development finance corporation. It's the UK's development finance corporation. We invest in Africa and in Asia. Now, how I ended up doing this job, which has taken already 12 years of my life. I know, I'm very young, I know. Actually it was by chance. By background, I'm an environmental scientist. I'm not a banker, sorry. I'm an environmental scientist and an environmental engineer. And after finishing my degree on environmental engineering, I got a call from the Spanish DFI. We also in Spain have Spanish DFI saying, oh, would you like to join our team? I did some research. I thought, but this is a bank. Why they need me? What the hell is going on here? I think that they may want me to do different things, crunching numbers, etc. But actually, no. Actually, they really wanted someone to help them to assess environmental and social risks and help them to manage those risks. At that point in time, I think that this point around transforming easy risks into opportunities was more about just managing E&S risks, okay? A lot of different parties had bumpy rides, had difficulties. A lot of investors were being chased by NGOs. So some of us were being poached by some development finance institutions and even some commercial banks to help them assess and manage environmental and social risks. So I thought that I was not going to last a lot in this financial institution, and that was 12 years ago. So I worked for the Spanish DFI for 6.5 years in Madrid, with a lot of traveling to Latin America, but also to Africa a little bit, and also to Asia. Then I moved to London. That was 5 years ago, because Standard Chartered, yes, Standard Chartered, yeah, a commercial bank also. A commercial bank wanted to increase the number of E&S, environmental and social. Sorry for the acronyms. Please interrupt me if I use acronyms that you don't know what they mean. I'm going to use E&S and ESG all the time, okay? The environmental and social team at Standard Chartered actually called me and made me an offer, and I said, oh, why not? Let's try a bit the commercial banking side of things. And I was there for a year, and after that, I got an offer from CDC and joined CDC almost 4 years ago. A fantastic team, as the other teams, but now it's my team, and I can say that they're a fantastic team, and clearly they are far much better than myself. So I'm sorry you got the weak one. And that's my life. I think that's enough. Also, my background, just to finalize, is also on occupational health and safety. So I'm an accredited occupational health and safety under Spanish regulations, which it was a complete nightmare, 1,100 hours in 6 months while working, but that's a different story, okay? So,
they're all doing this now.
okay. So what we do in CDC, as I said, is we try to create jobs, but obviously not any type of jobs. We want to invest in developing countries in Africa and in Asia and create sustainable jobs in a responsible manner. This doesn't mean also, this does not mean that we don't look at the financials. Obviously, we have to look at the financials, okay? That's important also for sustainability. But we look at other things. And this is what we're going to talk about right now. Before I start showing you some slides, which I love to use the slides that I'm going to show you as prompts, so that you ask me, question me, you even swear at me, no, I don't believe this, you're lying, whatever you want, please do, okay? So this is a little video of one of our transactions in Sierra Leone. Just 3 minutes.
West Africa have not specified
So now that you have seen what we do, and this is something that not this specific deal, but things like this I see on the ground at least every month. We travel really frequently. So let's get into the talk. So transforming easy risks into opportunities. Let's set the context a little bit. So what does responsible investment means? Anyone? Come on, don't be shy. I've been told that I will be challenged, that you will be shouting at me. Lots of promises have been made.
Investment that takes care of future needs.
That's a very good definition. 1 second, I'm going to change it. No, I like that definition.
Could people, when they speak, could they also give Pelayo an idea of where you're from, please?
Please, yeah.
Andrew, from the UK, drilling engineer working in Qatar.
Ah, great.
Abdul
Yeah.
from Saudi Arabia.
Hey, Abdul.
I think in responsible investment means when you make an investment, it's not only to make money, but to make impact in people's lives.
Okay. Good definition too.
Investment.
Yeah, please. Whoever. Yeah.
Jarita from Zimbabwe.
Uh-huh.
I was going to say investment to restore what has been damaged.
To restore what's been damaged. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, responsible investment means besides looking at a sustainable business case or business model, also taking into consideration ISG issues and if it's responsible for the environment, people around it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're from?
I'm from the Netherlands.
But that costs money, right?
It costs money, but
We'll
way
see.
against financials.
Yeah.
So my name is Art, I'm also Dutch.
Yeah.
Responsible investment is also an investment which will pay out for the investor. At the
Okay.
end, there must be profitable business.
Okay, so there is not, so apart from ESG aspects, there are other aspects like financial returns, right?
Sure.
Okay, so all the definitions are right. There are many definitions around this, so I just took what the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment says, which is more or less what you were saying, that it's an approach to investing which does not only take into account financial returns, but ESG aspects. And as we will see in a second, actually, sometimes you can not only avoid making losses by managing ESG risks, but also you can get additional money, additional returns. I was saying that comes with a cost. Sometimes that cost is nothing compared to the return on investment. And I say nothing, meaning sometimes time. Very, very little time. And I'll prove that to you in a second. So I saw your profiles, and I saw people from the oil and gas sector which have actually very detailed guidance on environmental health and safety aspects. I saw people from the power sector. So just very quickly, let's run through these 6 slides. 6 pictures. Let's focus on the first one, top left. Can anyone tell me what are the key ESG risks that they can see? This is a food processing plant.
Infection, hygiene.
Hygiene, that's a good. Food safety, that's the technical wording. Yeah, food safety. Anything else? Empowerment
Yeah,
of
that's the staff there.
the staff. Okay. Does everybody agree with me that, for instance, food safety is a key component of any activity in the food sector? So we all agree that ESG is paramount in this sector. Forestry, we have seen a video. What are the issues with forestry, if any?
Flooding,
Droughts, soil erosion, invasive alien species. That's why the gentleman was saying we want to preserve existing species here. Okay?
even migration.
Migration, yeah, that's correct. They are typically in remote areas, actually. That's very true. Let's focus on another one. Let's focus on this one down here with the wooden goods. Any risks there?
Deforestation.
I like that. Why are you talking about cutting trees if we're seeing a plant?
Because the
This
wood
is-
comes from the trees.
Exactly. Yeah? This comment that now seems very obvious, 15 years ago wasn't. Why do I care about trees that are not in my facility? I don't manage them. But now we go to IKEA. Sorry, I don't work to IKEA. We go anywhere and we see certification schemes that didn't exist 15 years ago, right? And this thing that you have flagged is very, very important. And we'll see it in a second. So, first thing, do we all agree that our risks from an ESG perspective do not end at the gates of the factory or the project? Now it's pretty obvious, right? It wasn't in the past. And for some people, it's still not obvious. Sorry, and by risks, I don't only mean making this a better planet. I mean these risks, losing money. Let's focus on this one here. Those are schools. Very basic schools, as you can see. Any risks there around ESG?
Risk in terms of safety of the students or in terms of quality of education?
Exactly. So quality of the education, certainly. I'm not going to include it under ESG, but certainly. But yeah, hygiene standards, right? So as you can see, these are cheap schools, which are needed in a lot of regions. So there you need to become innovative around how you manage what we call WASH standards, water, sanitation and hygiene standards, right? When we don't have a lot of money. But we all agree that that's paramount. We wouldn't send, no matter whether we make millions or we make peanuts, we don't want to send our kids to schools that do not meet certain standards, correct? Okay, as you can see, everything is pretty obvious. So, we have been talking about ESG. What is ESG then? What do you think that environmental cover? Which aspects would you include under the environmental pocket? Waste or emissions, water, pollution, deforestation, which we can link to biodiversity. Okay, there you go. I have included natural cultural heritage because we're celebrating that in 2017 the lakes became a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is very difficult and is fantastic. Social aspects, all these, right? So labor and working conditions, including health and safety, community health, safety and security. I know that some people here work in peacekeeping, so security can be a really, really big issue. Land acquisition and involuntary displacement. How many of you have heard the term land grabbing? Yeah, there you go. And in Africa, where I work a lot, it's a really big issue, which gets exacerbated by the fact that a lot of times you ask for titles and there are no formal titles. This becomes even more acute in fragile and conflict states. There are some people here from DRC. I go to DRC roughly now every 6 months. In some cases, you ask for documentation that is not there because of all the issues that happened in the past, particularly in the eastern side of DRC, which is where I go. Governance. So governance is around how a company is structured, right? We all agree with that. So is there a committee? Is there no committee? What are the reporting lines? What's the staff? And that, as we will see, it's absolutely paramount. So no matter how many management plans, procedures, policies, documents you have in place, if you don't have the right people, forget about it. Nothing is going to happen. I say this with zero hesitation. Mark, sorry? Andrew, sorry. Andrew, oil and gas sector. Yeah. It's a very clear, very, very clear example. The oil and gas sector, I'm pretty sure that any company will have all the documents. But then if you don't have the right people, the right resources allocated, you're grounded, okay? Also, obviously, business integrity, anti-money laundering, and anti-corruption. And there are many more. I'm going to focus on the ENS and the first bit of governance because we have a team in CDC dealing with business integrity, anti-money laundering, anti-corruption. Obviously, I know something but I may not be as well positioned as with the ENS elements, but please ask any questions. And as you can see, there is a sweet spot in the middle. That sweet spot in the middle is what we want to achieve, that we're taking into account the three circles, and our investment deals with all three of them, plus making money. Easy peasy. So, the key question, I have a lot of money, why should I care about ESG? Specific, I want to give me an example of why would you care about ESG?
To make the investment sustainable?
Give me an example, very specific.
Well, what happens with the oil sector, for example, is you don't care about the environmental. Any damage against the environmental can damage your value of your company and then of your investment.
Any recent examples that you can think about?
The last one, BP, the most famous one, no?
Exactly. So BP, one accident. I don't know how many operations BP have worldwide. One accident, billions. That's what it takes, right? So that's a good example. Any other examples?
Don't forget to introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, Eduardo from Buenos Aires.
Eduardo, encantado.
Martin from the UK.
Yeah.
Volkswagen.
Sorry?
Volkswagen.
Okay, yeah. So another example. Yeah. What happened in British Telecom?
Well, they had a subsidiary company in Italy, and they were all involved with shady bookkeeping, and it costed the company so much money.
Okay, governance, yeah. But we are all talking about really big companies. Does this matter for SMEs? Sorry, small and medium enterprises?
Yeah.
Why?
I was going to refer to the wood company that you showed us earlier.
Yeah.
If trees are not going to be grown in a sustainable manner, they're not going to have their raw material.
Okay,
And
that's
they won't operate.
exactly. Einstein said a long time ago, we cannot create matter, right? So if tomorrow we don't have any wood, we're not going to have any furniture. So, and this obviously does not only affect large companies, also small companies, right? So, as we can see, there are a number of aspects which will affect our pocket as investors. Over the past years, lots of things have happened. We have already flagged some of them, but let's very quickly run through them. So, and let me know if you disagree. Is it fair to say that the regulations from an ENS and ESG perspective have become more stringent over the past 5 years? Is it fair to say that a lot of those regulations do not only affect the boundaries of the country, but any citizen or any company where the head office, with a head office in the regulating company misbehaving? For instance, the UK Anti-Bribery Act.
Sure, absolutely.
Exactly. The US regulations. In Spain also we have some regulations. Is it fair also to say that there is an increasing number of international agreements and conventions? Paris will be the last one, but there are many others. Increased pressure on natural resources and international complex supply chains. Those are quite related. So now we source things from anywhere and everywhere. Things that were unfeasible years ago now are feasible. So we're putting a lot of pressure on our resources, water, soil, wood. Very importantly, and you have all flagged this, customers, we do care about where things come from. It's not enough to have a good product. We now want to know where that chicken is coming from, where that wood is coming from. And you know what? At least in developed countries, we don't care about paying a bit more, which by the way is not always the case. Okay? Very important and very good, obviously. All that I'm sharing with you is my personal view, okay? So I think that I will agree with everything. CDC will agree with me virtually on everything, but I just want to make it clear that this is my personal view, okay, and not necessarily represent all the companies I work for, although I think that they agree with me. Communities are more aware about their rights, which is fantastic. I see a lot of people from Africa. I saw that. This is incredible in Africa, isn't it? As an investor, it's a risk. Yeah, it's a risk, but as a human being, it's great. I'm going to share with you very, very daunting stories because sometimes that is misused, okay, and abused, which creates a lot of problems for investors. And what is very sad, a lot of problems to good investors, investors that are transparent, get chased by NGOs more than others that do not give a thing about it.
Putting their head above the parapet.
Exactly. And this is also becoming a problem for some investors. Some investors are saying, look, sometimes we're hesitant to share more information, not because we're not doing the right thing or because we have something to hide. It's because in the past we were chased when we were doing much more things than another investor or another company literally 500 meters ago from us. But this is good news. Communities are more aware of their rights. Increased pressure from NGOs and media, very, very clear. Now, investors have increased their demands for ESG. So a lot of investors, and I'm not only talking about development finance institutions, i.e. institutions that manage money from governments or invest with money which initially came from governments. Also, commercial banks are demanding this. The Equator Principles is a voluntary initiative signed by over 80 banks by which they commit to require any project exceeding certain thresholds that I don't want to bore you with details to comply with certain international ENS standards. If you don't meet them, in theory, they are not allowed to lend you, okay? 15 years ago, this was not happening. And finally, obviously, population dynamics and changes, so people move from one place to another, there are different dietary requirements, we're changing our diet, there are lots of implications around population, which obviously in some cases exacerbates this risk. So for instance, a good example would be pressure on natural resources, okay? So, David kept telling me, no, you need to tell them about your life and your story. So there you go. So what's the first word you learn when you go to Africa as a white European? Come on. Come on. Exactly. So this is in the DRC. Okay. The first time I went to DRC, we went into a classroom. We were looking at an investment that we have made, and this is in the media, near Virunga, the oldest national park in Africa, and one of the oldest worldwide. Fantastic, is where you can find the gorillas, etc. These were hydropower plants, so we wanted to visit who will be benefiting from the electricity, and some of these were schools. So I went into a classroom, and literally all the pupils like ran away, like going back, super scared. But then they realized that I wasn't that bad, although there I look a bit like a homeless, and I really like this picture. So it's great when you go to visit who is benefiting from the work that you're doing. But the work that we're doing very, very humbly, because obviously the heavy lift comes from the companies, and we shouldn't forget that. Okay, the companies are the ones on the ground. We just go there, visit them, try to help them, but they're the ones fighting every day. So here is an unbearable graph of potential risk and opportunities and how you can turn them into opportunities. A lot of them are self-explanatory, but I want to touch on things that may be less obvious for some of you. So for instance, let's talk about corruption, okay? So there you have control of corruption, and then you have reduced transaction costs. That's very obvious. If I don't have to pay money, I will save money, right? Very, very easy. Are there any other risks that you can see around this? Yeah, persecution, etc. But any other risks? Anything else?
When you stop paying,
When you stop paying. So once you start paying, you carry on. Obviously, the minute that investors like us find out those things, we have to say, I'm really sorry, but we're not happy with this, okay, and actions are taken. But there is another risk around corruption. So Rana Plaza rings a bell. In Bangladesh, the Rana Plaza accident, when it collapsed and a lot of people died, unfortunately. So
Textiles manufacturing.
exactly. What happens a lot of times is that the minute you pay someone not to look at things, they're not going to look at those things. So if I send an approval, a technical approval, to an engineer to check the safety of a building, and I pay them not to check it, what they're going to do? They're not going to check it. So corruption is not only about reducing costs or getting persecuted. If I send you an environmental approval and I don't ask you to check it, you're not going to check it. And all the environmental impacts, all the technical specifications, etc., no one is going to check that. And that means additional risks. And in some countries, actually, yes, more personal experience. In some countries, you'll find that it doesn't really matter, actually, because the skills are not there. So sometimes you need to say, fine, thank you very much, government, technical body, because you have checked this. I don't care. I'm going to hire another engineer, an international engineer, because sometimes they don't have the capacity. And
even the legislation in the country is not done for that.
Or even with good legislation, in theory, because bear in mind that a lot of countries, so for instance, if you go to Francophone Africa, they took a lot of their legislation from France. If you go to Latin America, some of them took it from the United States. If you go to English-speaking countries in Africa, a lot of them took them from the Anglo-Saxon world. The issue is how they implement them. And this is where a lot of times, even if you have an approval from a body, trust me, sometimes means literally nothing. And we have had this issue. We have asked an individual to check some buildings independently because just we didn't trust the approvals granted by the government. And we knew that it wasn't because of corruption, because they had the approvals. It's just that they don't have the technical skills that we need. So, and here you can see some benefits of dealing with ESG aspects, but I want to discuss them with some case studies. So this is a telecom company. This one is in our portfolio. Actually, I'm talking about this one, but actually we have more than one that is exactly doing the same. They're doing the exact same thing in different continents, in Asia and in Africa. So these telecoms companies, what they're doing is they started having some problems with fuel, because a lot of these towers are placed in very remote areas, right? So you need to hire a truck. The truck goes down there. Sometimes in some countries they get robbed. So the telecoms company may end up breaching the contracts that they have with the operators, et cetera, et cetera. So what they did is, you know what? Let's install solar panels in some of the towers. And actually it has been incredibly successful. And we're seeing this in lots of our portfolio companies in the telecom space. And they were not forced by anyone to do it. They did it and they are saving, you can see there the statistics, a lot of money by not using that amount of diesel, but also very importantly, and this is very important in Africa, there are some countries in Africa in which security risks are super high in remote areas. And by sending less trucks to those areas, they have very, very significantly reduced accidents. And unfortunately, accidents which sometimes involve people getting damaged. So this is a very good example of how, we may have to invest a bit of money on solar panels and the how do you say it? Sorry.
In Spanish, there's lots of Spanish speakers here.
No, it's going to come to me. I have forgotten even in Spanish. Okay, I will remain. I will remember. So you need to spend a lot of money in the solar panels and in the system to store the power, but it's worth doing it. And all the companies are now doing it more frequently. This is one of the examples. Another example. This is Bangladesh and India. So 8 global retailers decided to engage with the supply chains, with 73 suppliers in Bangladesh and in India, to talk about the labor and working conditions, working hours, wages, health and safety, etc., etc. The benefits are already there. Just by engaging with them, they managed to reduce the number of hours by 2.5%. The salaries were increased. Retention was very significantly increased. Absenteeism was also much lower. And there you go, the return on investment. 21%, 13%. And as you can see, the investment was not very high. But they saved quite a bit of money.
You should show this to Zara.
Huh? Sarah, I'm pretty sure that Sarah has some statistics too around this. But this is to prove that, as I said at the beginning, sometimes people think that getting some of the stuff done is really, really expensive. And they, we need to, I don't know, install an electrostatic precipitator. It's 3 million, whatever. No, sorry. Let's start with the low-hanging fruit. Let's start by training people. You have a senior guy knowing how to manage health and safety. Why aren't you communicating that to them? Why there's no training program? Just prepare 10 slides. Fatalities will be reduced. I guarantee that in 12 months. I'm 100% sure. I don't know in which percentage, but they will be reduced. Yeah, please.
Hi, Liam from the Lake District.
Yeah. Lovely place.
On both telecom example and this example, great examples of fantastic outcomes. Can you just talk a little bit about the mechanics? How did that come about? Was that the investor demanding, the investor influencing, asking? How did it happen, and what's the cause and effect?
Excellent question. So, in the case of the telecoms, this specific example around saving diesel came from the company. They came down to the conclusion that they were wasting a lot of energy and having a lot of problems with security. With this specific example, with other companies in the telecom sector, what we have done is actually tell them this. Why aren't you installing solar PV? And actually they are now trialing it. But with this specific example, it was the company. With the garment sector, with this one, I will need to check the report to see whether it was the company or some investors. I guess that it was the company. But in lots of instances, at least from CDC's perspective, CDC prompts the discussion. We shouldn't forget that the company needs to own and buy into the business case, because our experience, and my personal experience and humble opinion, is that if you try to shoehorn things through the throat of a company, sooner or later you're going to fail to deliver, particularly when your leverage goes down. So for instance, when you have dispersed all the money. So we in CDC invest a lot of time making the case for companies, but once you start showing these statistics, or once you start being pragmatic, because in the past a lot of investors, we were not pragmatic. We went with a list like this of requirements. So requirement 1003, tick. Requirement 10,000, tick, okay? Now the approach is changing a little bit. So a little bit now, drastically. We're all more pragmatic and we prioritize, right? And when people are dying because you can see that health and safety standards are really bad, you start with that, and then we will move towards solar PV, energy efficiency, right? And you make the case for things that can be addressed really easily, spending little money. So going back to the point, I think that is, to your question, it's a combination. Okay, some investors are more active than others, but I can tell you something that I'm sure about. The number of investors asking these questions and providing recommendations has increased drastically over the past 10 years. Also, very quickly, also when you provide these recommendations, you have to be quite humble, because at the end of the day, the company is the one on the ground, right? You cannot explain to a healthcare company how to manage a healthcare company. What you can tell them is, look, we have seen that in other healthcare companies, this is working. Why don't we discuss it?
Well, there's a question here.
Sure, yeah.
Right here in the middle.
Yeah, please, shout.
That's Mark, I'm from the UK, but I
Hey, Mark.
currently work in Timor-Leste, but I did spend about a year working in Bangladesh, albeit not in the garment area. Has CDC done a study or looked at the amount of capital flight from Bangladesh in the garment trade as a result of the enhanced, quite rightly enhanced, health and safety regulations imposed on the garment sector?
Unfortunately, we have not done that study. Our exposure to the garment sector, direct exposure, is zero right now. Through fund managers, because we invest indirectly, I will need to check the figures, but it's not one of our top sectors. Although we have some exposure, but I don't have the figures. I'm sorry.
I don't know the figures exactly, but friends of mine do work within the regulatory framework of the garment industry. Even now, from the garment industry has been moved to country.
Well, if that's an issue. So if you move from one country to another one because the regulations are weaker, we're failing to do what we want to do.
No, I agree.
Now, I think that all of us, companies, investors, every citizen is putting increasing pressure to try to avoid that. And you can see that there is an evolution in Bangladesh. You work in Bangladesh. So after the Rana Plaza accident, you know that two private initiatives of the garment sector came into place, Accord and Alliance is the other one, which is great. And I think that may happen in other countries. Yeah, there are some other countries, like you're saying, in which things probably are less under the radar, but I hope that we all together get that better.
It may be worth having a look into, because I mean the savings are wonderful to see that, but if that is at the cost of losing half or maybe as much as half of their primary export, then we need to think about the secondary risks. Maybe.
Definitely. Great.
Just a question for Mark. Why, if you're a company, why would you move if you can make more money?
I don't know, because I was a company.
That there's more regulation, perhaps. Like that.
Well, no, companies, in the terms of the ones that have moved, if they're big companies, it's because they're ruthless and they want to keep their bottom line where it is, and they don't want to spend the additional money in the additional regulatory requirements in Bangladesh. So they go to Cambodia or they go to Laos, where it is.
Because they're not aware of this.
No, that's the point. The companies have moved their operations because of the additional regulatory requirements within Bangladesh.
There is where
reputational damage, people buy the products in the West and that gets out in the media.
But has it got out in the media?
No, yeah, so I think that Mark's point is valid, that some companies may do that. Fine, obviously the question is who wants to work with those companies. I think that the number of people willing to work with those companies is going down increasingly rather than up, which is good. And now, yeah, you're right also. I think that we all have to be pragmatic and make these business cases clearly. But even without money, so if we focus, so sometimes people say, oh, Pelayo, what standards do you use? And I can spend days with you discussing the standards. I'm very happy to stay here in the Lake District and visit everything. But you know what is the biggest standard? And apologies for stating the obvious, but it's common sense, isn't it? Right? So policies. Someone said to me, policies and standards is what I need to refer to when common sense is not working. So, do I need to have a figure to show to someone that if I have a health and safety specialist or a health and safety practitioner in a company, and you're having people hanging around at the risk of dying, literally, is it not worth spending 1 hour per week in a toolbox? 30 minutes. So, and this is where I think that also investors, we need to be very clear and send the message very clearly. And focus first on the really, really worrying issues, then move to the secondary, tertiary, et cetera, right? Because there's a lot of stuff, the really worrying issues like forced labor, child labor, working hours, wages, there are countries in which, it's really difficult, okay? And we have dealt with that, and in my professional career, I have dealt with that, okay? So I'm not gonna say that it's easy peasy. But what is easier is pushing companies or inviting companies to invest time rather than capex in training, for instance. Sad story here. Engagement with communities has been neglected for long years, and I think that we all agree with that, right? So this was a project in Africa which changed its sponsor several times, okay, over a period of 6, 7, 8 years. I will need to check. And a number of studies were done, a number of environmental and social impact assessments were done, some of them by international practitioners, so everything looked fantastic. However, when the EPC contractor, engineering, procurement and construction contractor, went to the site, some people with some machetes were there waiting for them. Hey guys, what are you doing here? We have not been compensated for anything. This is our land. Obviously, the EPC contractor went like, whoa, 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 whoa. 1 second, you have all the approvals. There's a study. We pass. We're leaving. This is the company's issue. So what happened here is that the company, the sponsor, failed to engage on an ongoing basis with communities, and they completely missed this issue. Because they prepare a compensation plan, they prepare lots of papers, etc., but they were not there on the ground, discussing things with them, getting their hands dirty, which is what we should all do in this world, okay? When we work on ENS. Outcome, write-off, no project. That's it. End of the story. Because the government was like, the company went like, but we have complied with everything. Why are you helping us? I don't know anything, man. This is the local government. I'm really sorry, I cannot do a thing. Whenever there is an issue, trust me, communities are going to go after the company, not after the government. And the government at some point may go like, ooh, I pass. Okay? So, let's move to the next part. So how we do this? How is my work? So, anyone has an investment opportunity? Any projects? I have money here. Cash. No opportunities? Okay. So I have an opportunity that CDC can finance directly because it's too far away and too small for us to be able to look at it. However, we do look at that. How? Through banks. So CDC would finance banks because they can reach sometimes this population. Yeah. And the issue you said around corruption, I think that we have already covered it. That is
sorry to
appalling.
go back to this corruption, because in my country we do use English law merged with French law, but they fantastically managed to create loopholes. The government itself has done that to basically void these laws.
Well,
so the law exists, but then they come up with another law, and they acknowledge that, and then it's a way for them to get out.
But that's the never-ending story, isn't it? Yeah. That enforcement of law is one thing, and it's completely different from the written law. And this is why, when we conduct our due diligence, a lot of times we hire local experts not to tell us what the law says, to tell us what actually happens on the ground, because sometimes the gap is huge, right? So,
policy doesn't implement itself.
Exactly. So, I know that there are some people in the healthcare sector. So this is a pharma plant, okay? So what we would do during the investment proposal is we'll have a look at the processes. We'll see where everything is coming from, what are the inputs, what are the outputs. We will visit the facility, and we will try and see whether, as you have pointed out, where there are emissions to air, to water, waste, etc., right? So as we have touched on this and we're running behind schedule, I don't want to spend a lot of time. But something very important is, who do you talk to? So remember what I told you around, no matter how many procedures you have, etc., this is something that is paramount to us. We always try and identify the key individuals, because without the key individuals, nothing is going to happen on the ground. So, business case. And if I had to pick one thing out of all the presentations, all the slides that I'm showing you, I would pick this one and the last one. A lot of times, the best way to deal with a risk is avoiding it. Pretty obvious, right? Well, we fail all the time to do that. I am fed up of seeing, for instance, environmental and social impact assessments without an alternatives analysis. That's always the first thing you need to think about. Can I move this project here because construction has not started, and rather than resettling 5,000 people, I would resettle 100. You cannot imagine how many times people do not even think about that. No, that's unfeasible. Have you crunched the numbers? No, let's do it. I remember a project in which the International Finance Corporation, thanks to pushing the company to do that, they managed to reduce the number of resettled people from 1,100 to 65. So, once more, a lot of times it's much cheaper to avoid a risk or to reduce the risk than trying to deal with the consequences. And if we look to this, it would be the best example I can think about, health and safety. Remember I told you that I'm a health and safety guy, so sorry, but I need to bring these statistics. So there is nothing, generally speaking, there is nothing cheaper than preventing an accident. Nothing. But yet a lot of companies do not want to spend $5 on a hard hat, $10 on shoes, and very importantly, let's forget about those, on training. They keep forgetting. They don't give a damn. Sorry for my language. But you can see the statistic there. The UK said that the insured costs of an accident are 10 times less than the not insured costs of an accident. And that in a lot of times, in lots of cases, I think that is actually an understatement, because there are lots of things that you cannot measure. And you say, no, but people don't care about this. Yes, we did some research, and actually we found that in Africa, one of the factors for people to remain in their jobs is good health and safety practices. And I did this myself. I pick up the phone and call companies. And they say, yeah, actually health and safety is one of the key things which have improved retention. So please, no matter where you work, always apply the approach, the preventive approach, particularly, not exclusively, but particularly with health and safety. The numbers are there. But we were talking about where our risks and opportunities finish, and we said they do not finish at the gates of our factory. So let's prove that. This is a real example. I cannot disclose the name of the company because there's no deal yet. So this is a company in Africa which manufactures lots of food products, and they have a very big industry of milkshakes and yogurts and dairy stuff. So some years ago they realized that they wanted to keep their relationship with the smallholders because they wanted to have an impact on their communities. They're a very large company, and they actually feel that they need smallholders. They don't want to have their own cows. So they said, no, we want to rely on smallholders. So what they did is they start to establish some local collection centers for milk, and they started to deliver training without charging anything, free. And you say, no, but only for those who were giving the milk to the company. No, anyone could attend. So they provide training on things like animal well-being, so that the cows would produce more milk and they won't get mistreated, on things like veterinary care, and very importantly, on food safety. Because they realized that actually a lot of the milk that they were getting was not up to the standard they needed. So they delivered all the training, and you know what? The yield has increased massively, okay, over 20%. Communities, despite the fact that in some cases they can get a bit more of money elsewhere, they go to the company because of the trust that they have built, because also the company pays in cash directly, okay? And this is an example of how a company thought about supply chain risks and opportunities, invested a bit of money, and the returns are being incredibly big. The percentage of milk rejected before they started doing this, I asked them, they didn't have the figures, but they said, easily 50%, easily. Now, less than 5%. There you go. So I don't want to bore you with the details because I really want to go to the Q&A. This is how we do it. This is boring. You will have the slides. This is a site visit, okay? So more site visits. Once more, get your hands dirty. Go to the site visits whenever you invest in something, or when you want to check things. There's nothing like having a face-to-face conversation, seeing how things are done and why, understanding why is very important, why your scaffolding looks like this. I never go like, hey, what the hell are you doing? All those wood. No. Sorry, can you tell me why scaffolding is like this? And sometimes you get answers like, you know what? Our supplier went bankrupt. So we're trying to find a new one, which is completely different from, I don't care, wood is cheaper. So always ask why. I know that once more I'm stating the obvious, but let's ensure that we don't forget about it. If you're interested, and I will send this to Cumbria University, we have a toolkit which took away 1 year of my life, and it was particularly the 6 months before getting married. I'm still married. I don't know why. It's crazy people. My wife. I think that is a good toolkit. It's something that we put together for our fund managers, okay? And you have a lot of guidance on what are the key risks and opportunities per sector. And right now I think that we have 14 sectors and we're developing 2 others. You also have guidance on how to deal with things like indigenous peoples, air emissions, health and safety, etc., etc. If there's interest, I can show it to you later, okay? Why did we develop this? Because we cannot keep saying to companies, but you need to train, but you need to do something, and not do something, not do anything. So we said, no, we need to do something. We already had a toolkit, but this one was a significant improvement, okay, in terms of everything. And this is what we try to do. We try to produce thought leadership pieces of work. And finally, in a nutshell, do we all agree that robust ESG management is not only the right thing to do, but also a good business decision? Yeah? I'm super happy then. So that's it. And now Q&A or